Let me bring into the conversation Matthew Rothschild, who's the editor of the Progressive magazine. Hey, Matthew, thanks for joining us.
No problem, Andrew. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, well, actually, Andrew is the person who called you. This is David, the host of the show.
No, I'm sorry, David.
I've been following a lot of what you've been writing. We just talked about how I believe that the Democrats are at a point where there's no downside politically to just putting in place the healthcare reform that they've proposed via reconciliation. And my argument is, as it is now, they're not going to do well in November. Worst case scenario, they pass healthcare reform via reconciliation. They still don't do well in November, but at least they've passed it. And there is some potential upside. What do you think?
Well, the bill that Obama is proposing is not as good as it should be. And even today when he was talking about this is my last big push and this is the bottom line, he again went out of his way, swerved out of his way to hit single-payer insurance proposals, saying it was neither practical nor realistic. I don't know why he had to swipe those of us on the progressive side one last time, when in fact single-payer is certainly practical. We can argue whether it's realistic or not till the cows come home.
Sure.
Nor is he proposing a public option. I mean, a vast majority of the American public, 65%, 70% in every poll that I saw, wants Medicare for all who want it. He just is not proposing that. So, there are two questions. One, whether this is a desirable bill.
Right.
And the secondly is whether it's politically advantageous or not. And you can argue the desirability part. The thing that tugs at me and why sometimes I think it'd be better than not having it is because there'll be some poor people who don't have coverage right now who will be able to get Medicaid, several million people. Unfortunately, that doesn't come into being until 2014, and that's a long time for those people to wait. Politically, I think the Republicans have demonstrated that they're obstructionists. So if the Democrats are able to push this through, which I assume they will be, I think it will help the Democrats modestly. I don't think it's make or break. I actually think a lot of people are making too much of this question as to whether it lives or dies and what the ramifications are going to be on that. I think a far more important thing is if the Democrats are able to push through a bigger stimulus to help the economy going, that would be something that would really change the outcome of people's mindsets when they go into voting booths in November.
Well, no, they're definitely two separate issues. And on desirability, on our show, we've been talking about how much this bill has gone further and further downhill. And not that it even started at a great point. I mean, Barack Obama started the negotiation not from a particularly progressive standpoint. He wanted an okay public option, and he's negotiated very, very far away from that. Do you think that the mistake was starting with such a moderate position, a public option that will do some things to change the situation, versus saying let's expand Medicare and Medicaid as a test, or let's push for single payer, and I'd be willing to negotiate back to a public option?
Well, David, that's what he should have done. But I think what he did was he played us for chumps, actually. He played liberals, Democrats, progressives, and those who wanted fundamental health care reform just for fools, because he never really wanted a public option. Every time he mentioned a public option, almost, he said, it's just a sliver. It's not the most important thing. And he had Rahm Emanuel go over, sit on Max Baucus's lap for several months saying, you don't need to put the public option even in here.
Right.
So it's not a surprise at the end of the day that he doesn't include a public option. I think, looking at it realistically, we were taken advantage of, exploited, and just used as a prop.
Absolutely, no question about it. Let me switch gears a little bit with you. You wrote recently that the Pentagon and the Department of Homeland Security have been spying on Planned Parenthood, as well as other anti-abortion groups and other domestic groups. What's going on there?
Well, this is a very serious problem. I mean, the Pentagon has been monitoring and spying on peace groups since 9/11, and they've continued to do so. The Electronic Frontier Foundation, a great civil liberties organization, filed a lawsuit against the Pentagon and made the Pentagon disgorge thousands of documents that show there may be hundreds of civil liberties violations. I mean, one thing, they spied on Planned Parenthood. They also spied on a group called Alaskans for Peace and Justice. There's a real,
They sound dangerous to me.
A real dangerous group up in Alaska, and they were spied on by NORAD and NORTHCOM, the U.S. Northern Command that Bush brought into being in 2003. And so The question is, how many violations are we going to have by the Pentagon before there's serious congressional hearings on this? That's
so where's the violation? Is it that if there's no probable cause of a crime, there's no authority to spy on these groups, or where's the violation?
The Pentagon is not supposed to be the Pentagon's not supposed to spy on people. The FBI can spy on people only if there's real cause and they're able to go get a warrant to do so. The idea that the government just can willy-nilly go spy on people is something that's anathema to our system of government, but it's happening time and time again. And so I'm trying to go through some of those documents and find some more of these violations that have been occurring, because it's very concerning.
Do you know are they even citing a supposed crime as the reason for, or what reason is being given for why there's so much surveillance going into these groups?
Well, there's no reason given. All that the documents from the Pentagon showed, these were documents from internal inspector generals at the Pentagon saying, these groups did not represent a threat. Guess what? Planned Parenthood is not a threat to the U.S. military. Alaskans for Peace and Justice are not a threat to the U.S. military. I mean, that shouldn't come as a shocker to the people at the Pentagon. But these internal documents were disciplinary documents for the people in the various services who were routinely collecting information on people just exercising their First Amendment rights.
Is it unprecedented that the government spy specifically on Planned Parenthood?
Not unprecedented, actually, and it happened more recently than in the case that the Electronic Frontier Foundation disclosed, because right here in Wisconsin, where I'm at, there was a February 2008 demonstration with Planned Parenthood and pro-life people and the anti-abortion crowd, and the government, Homeland Security this time, not the Pentagon, Homeland Security was keeping files on both of those groups. I mean, this is just kind of outrageous that they would be considered a threat to Homeland Security.
Well, it's incredible. I mean, the underwear bomber's father calls the CIA and gives specific information about the risks that he presents, and there's so many resources going into spying on a group like Planned Parenthood. There seems to be a huge disconnect, does there not?
There sure is, and this is just part of the insidious U.S. history of spying on protesters that goes back most notoriously to the 1960s and the Council program of the FBI, where they were looking at the Black Panthers and American Indian movement, and J. Edgar Hoover was trying to destroy Martin Luther King. So it has very bad echoes.
We've been speaking with Matthew Rothschild, editor of the progressive.org. What do you see as the end result here of the 2010 election? I mean, does it look as bad for Democrats as many are saying?
Well, I think it's a bad climate, especially with the economy. There's some incumbents that are perceived as safe, but even Russ Feingold, our longtime senator here in Wisconsin, who's a real good senator,
right,
may be challenged by former Governor Tommy Thompson, and that could be a tough race. It's going to be a bad, close season for Democrats. Progressive.org
is the website. Matthew, thank you for calling in today.
My pleasure, David.
Take care. Okay, well, if you haven't been on our YouTube channel, please do check it out, youtube.com/Midweek Politics. You can subscribe. It costs you nothing, and there's a lot of good stuff going on there. David Pakman here with you.
This is Midweek Politics with Dave Pakman.
Midweek Politics is brought to you in part by Just Coffee Cooperative, fair trade coffee from around the world, roasted daily at justcoffee.coop. By Jackson & Connor, classically modern men's apparel in Northampton, Massachusetts on the second floor of Thorne's Marketplace. To find out more about underwriting Midweek Politics, visit midweekpolitics.com.